Hi everybody, welcome to Friday's version of our video devotion. Today I'm going to just show you a passage that is pretty much the same thing in Samuel that's also in Luke about Jesus. And it's just one verse. It's chapter 2, verse 26 in 1 Samuel. And it says, "Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew taller and grew in favor with the Lord and with the people." And then if we go back to Luke chapter 2, verse 52, it says, "Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature," or grew taller, "and in favor with God and all the people." So there's a direct quote almost between Samuel and how he's growing up and Jesus and how he was growing up. In Jesus' case, he had just stayed in the temple while his parents went home, and they finally realized he wasn't there, and they came back and they said, "Where have you been?" And Jesus says, "Well, didn't you know I would be in my Father's house?" And then it says Mary pondered this in her heart. In Samuel's case, it's a little different. Samuel now has been given to Eli and to the priesthood, and he is a young boy now, and he's learning about God and about the priesthood. He's working in the temple because his mother had dedicated him to God, and this was the way she did that. But what's happening in Eli's family is not a good thing. I'll just read a little bit before our text today, and it said, "Now Eli was very old, but he was aware what his sons were doing to the people of Israel. He knew, for instance, that his sons were seducing the young women who assisted at the entrance of the tabernacle, or the tent, or what was the temple, finally. Eli said to them, 'I have been hearing reports from all the people about the wicked things you were doing. Why do you keep sinning? You must stop, my sons. The report I hear about the Lord's people are not good. If someone sins against another person, God can mediate for the guilty party. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can mediate? Who can intercede?' But Eli's sons wouldn't listen to their father, for the Lord was already planning to put them to death." And then the next line is, "Meanwhile," as in contrast to Samuel, "the boy Samuel grew taller and grew in favor with the Lord and with the people." He was doing the right things. This is a real mess for Eli. His sons are priests in the temple, and they're abusing the priesthood in many ways. You heard about women, but also in the food that was coming in. They were trying to make money where they shouldn't have been. And God has a problem, of course, with this. And he says, it's a little bit later on, he says to them, "Why do you give your sons more honor than you give me?" In other words, Eli, why aren't you interceding here, kicking out your sons out of the temple? And well, that couldn't be any noisier, could it? Kicking your sons out of the temple and focusing on me instead. Your sons don't deserve this, the deference you're showing them. And I started thinking about that and thinking, how many times do I defer to other things other than God? I've talked a lot about how we are to depend on God and not other things, but one of the problems that we often have in our lives is that the people closest to us are maybe the biggest problem in our relationship with God, that we are putting them above God himself. And I have done this all my life by worrying about what people think about me instead of worrying about what God thinks about me. And so many times I've put them above God. Or maybe you have a bad relationship and you're doing things you shouldn't do for this person, rather than following what God wants you to do. So we do this a lot of ways, but anything that gets above God, gets more important than God, is a problem in our lives and isn't good. And you're going to see that that happens over and over again in the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, where things become more important than God in their lives. For Saul, it's his wives that aren't Jewish who lead him down a path of different religions. For David, it was Bathsheba that became more important than following what God wanted. But that's kind of what this book is about. And it's important for us to really think about what we're doing with our closest relationships. And is God number one in our families? I think many times in parents, children become more important than God. And you can see that in kind of their behaviors, and we're going to sacrifice everything for our children and their athletics, and we're going to kind of let church go off on the back burner here. But we really need to be careful, especially with our closest relationships, that we are putting God first and not getting that relationship mixed up. Because as soon as we do, things in our life, I'm not saying they aren't going to go well, but our life will be out of balance. And your life will be out of balance, and your life will stop experiencing peace that God has to offer. So that's just my thought. It's a little bit off of our text for the day, but I think it's important for us to really look at those things. And I hope you have a great weekend. I want to remind you that we have worship here at 5 o'clock Saturday night here in the courtyard, and also 8:30 Sunday morning here in the courtyard, and then at 11 o'clock in the sanctuary. God bless. Have a great weekend. Take care.